Welcome to This Week in Pulling, the show that brings you all the action from the world of tractor and truck pulling. I'm Dan Mayer, joined by Jeremy and Miles Krieger, and each week we'll dive into the latest highlights, breaking news, and behind-the-scenes stories from the sport we all love. From upcoming events, standout performances, and the rich history that shaped pulling into what it is today, we've got you covered. So buckle up, This Week in Pulling starts now. Well, good evening, everybody. Dan Mayer, joined by Miles and Jeremy Krieger. Guys, how you doing tonight?
Evening, Dan. Evening, Miles. It's good to see you guys again. Is this number 8?
Number 8, yeah, episode number 8. All right,
8 is great. Welcome.
8 is great.
Thank you guys for being with us, and we're going to talk mini rods tonight.
Yeah, we got mini rods. This past weekend, Columbus, Texas, was on Full Pull Live. They had a Texas Truck and Tractor Pullers event down there. Unfortunately, Friday night was a washout, but Saturday they had quite an array of equipment down there, and was able to check out some of the action there on Full Pull Live. And you know, them Texas pullers, they're always tough for sure, and they came out in force, so that was pretty good to watch. Did you guys see any of that? Or
I did not. I followed along on social media. Various people were there. I know the Nelsons were down there visiting with sister and brother-in-law, and I don't know if they were pulling down there or just visiting, but I know I did see some snaps from that event. From what I understand, it was a pretty good show. At least they got it in Saturday night over there on the other side of the river, as we would call it.
That's right, yeah. Other side of the river. The Zycheks put that on down there, and quite an event from what everybody was telling me that was down there. It was pretty impressive, so good to see, and glad to see that they got one night in.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. It's been a busy week for you already, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, it's I had to get my chicken wing bowl out, and I had to, been picking numbers here all week for Farley, and boy, that's been pretty interesting how that has all worked out. And we've got 3 of the classes out of the 6 picked here, and we'll do that next Sunday, April 11th at 7:00, and we'll do the super stock diesel trucks, and then we'll do the mini rods next Monday, and then we'll conclude it all with the pro stocks. And I don't know if you guys have seen the lineups there, and just unbelievable the turnout that they have had for these events, and it's going to be one heck of a show. I can't wait for that one.
Well,
I have a question for you, and maybe you've already answered it and I just missed it, but if a 4-wheel drive truck still wants to be entered, can they do so and join the mix, or it's closed?
Yeah, he RJ the other day did mention, because there was some talk about them going to have some concessions for it, if somebody wanted a spot, and then he said the other night he said, nope, that's it, it's closed. Once we pick, that's it, no more. So he says if you haven't joined by now, he says that you're out of luck.
You're not going to.
You're not going to. So
yes, sir, I appreciate it.
So, but yeah, it's things are ramping up, guys. I mean, we're going pulling next weekend down at Sullivan's, and knock on wood, the weather is looking pretty good down there. And I know the last couple of years since I've moved down here, it seems like the weather that second week in May seems to not be so good down there for the Sullivans, but hopefully this weekend they'll be able to get it in. As right now, early in the week, it's looking pretty good. So
it does look pretty stellar here for Friday and Saturday. So looking forward to that show as well. And it'll be a mess of 2-wheelers in Glencoe, Kentucky this weekend. If you don't know, it's the Hansel Sullivan Memorial, and they have a big 2-night show there, and the 2-wheelers pull both nights, and the Kentuckian does some exhibition passes, and then they've got a full card of TNT sanctioned events as well. So if you're anywhere near Glencoe, Kentucky, the Gallatin County Fairgrounds this weekend, get yourself up there. It's going to be a great show.
Yeah, the Big Ed Challenge.
Big Ed Challenge. They take the smallest cumulative number from both nights, and then the Big Ed Challenge is awarded to the person who has the best finish over the 2-night stand there for sure.
And it's kind of the mystique behind, being down there along the river, where the 2-wheelers, were
where it all began. For sure.
Yeah, I mean, where everything started for the 2-wheelers. And I think Donnie had told me that Vivi was the first pull that they actually, I learned how to say that. I used to say Vive, but since I've been down that way, I learned that it's Vivi, Indiana. Yeah. And that was the first ever, pull that they had with the two-wheel drives, and there you can see some of the things that are happening there. What is that? Right off of exit 62, I think it is, right off of Interstate 71.
Yeah, not far from where the Sullivans are there in the Sparta area. Just super close, Gallatin County. 2 nights of pulling. They'll have the 3.0 diesels Friday night, super modified two-wheel drives, light limited super stock tractors, and then Saturday night 4 classes on the docket: 4x4 super modified trucks, super modified 2s, 3.0 diesels, and light modified tractors. And the Kentuckian will make exhibition passes. Papa Wayne at the helm both evenings, so make sure you get on out there. A good mix of everything from diesel trucks to long wheelbase blown 4-wheel drives. Always fun to watch those. And then like I say, in the past, Dan, they've averaged somewhere between 35 and 40 two-wheelers without fail, like really without blinking an eye. So I'd venture to say we'll be sort of in that same vein both nights there. Lots of folks using this as a test and tune. It's not sanctioned really as far as national ranks go. TNT will have points for it, but everybody does come out. So I haven't really heard who's all coming, but I would venture to say that we will have a mess of super modified two-wheel drives both evenings there.
And the super modified 4-wheel drives has been a class that has kind of really grown on me here since I've seen it. More and more. It's just very popular down in these parts. The long wheelbase trucks, and every time you get a chance to see those, it's always really cool and a really unique class. Really,
Absolutely.
That goes pretty far back. So that coming up this weekend. So the Hansel Sullivan Memorial Pull, and if you can't be there, we'll be on Full Pull Live to bring it to you both Friday and Saturday night. So a lot of action coming up, and we're starting to get things into high gear here. And speaking of high gear, we've got of course our power rankings, and we'll get into those here tonight. As we see, we've got the mini rods. We've got the picks up there as well for this weekend. Going to be able to do a little bit of wagering here on two-wheel drives. Looks like the 3.0 diesel truck class and the light limited super stock class will be the classes for Friday. You'll be able to, place your picks, see if you can win a little bit of cash. So make sure you check out Full Pull Picks as well, as we'll go right here into the driver rankings. And, guys, what is this, number 6, I think, for us? This is number 6 out of the 8 that we're going to be doing.
Sure.
And once again, tonight's for the mini rods, voted on by fellow competitors. Cannot vote for yourself, and it's your ability, driving ability, not your vehicle, nothing like that. So it's pretty cut and dry. So the other pullers vote on you, and they're handed a ballot, and they'll put 1 through 5 on there. And as you can see, if you got first place, you get 5 points, and so on down the line. And whoever had the most points is your number 1 ranked driver. So last week we had the super stock class. And we got to talk a little bit about that super stock class. There was a lot of people talking about that last week. So that was pretty interesting how that was. And of course, next week we'll have the super stock diesel 4-wheel drives, and then we'll cap it all off with the unlimited modifieds. And, going back to last week, we had, a lot of discussion about, people thought, so this puller here, Colin Ross came up quite a bit, why, he wasn't on the list. And so, it was quite an exciting week here as far as, a lot of people talking, a lot of discussion.
And we won't talk about the light super guys. I don't even want to know what they had to say.
Yeah, we're gonna possibly work on that for next year, or maybe get them, branch them off a little bit. But
there needs to be some further discussion on light supers, but it's gonna be fun tonight here. We're gonna talk mini rods.
Absolutely. Well, let's get right into it here. Number 5 mini rod here tonight. Number 5 ranked mini rod. So right there, we'll kick things off in that number 5 spot. We got Bruce Law with the Show No Mercy quarter scale, as he was voted in that number 5 spot here tonight as our number 5 ranked mini rod driver. What do you guys think?
Tough runner, Michigan-based runner. long-time competitor, and he can drive the wheels off about anything from multi-engine modifieds to, I know he started in garden tractors and old Ford 8Ns is back in the day, but he's a very, very good competitor and has kind of passed it along to, of course, his son, Tyler. So very, very competitive and very innovative in the world of chassis. Like I say, they put that weight distribution. They've kind of changed the game of putting the driver where they put him there with their particular frame set. So an innovator in the sport and a very, very competitive driver. Very, very good to see him in the top 5 here tonight. And I hope he's recuperating. I know he had a pretty bad accident over the winter snowmobiling up there, and good to hope that he is recuperating and getting back out to see us very soon on the circuit somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Continued prayers for him, and obviously a guy who I don't think you can dispute his presence in this group of 5.
Not at all.
And I still, as long as he's been running these mini rods, you still go back to, remember he had that modified where he sat really low, the 3-engine modified there, and just one of those things that you just kind of remember, as far as a good running machine there. So, we'll move on here to number 4.
Yeah, number 4 coming our way. And we'll make our way to Ohio for a gentleman who I would categorize as one of the most successful in this group ever. Over the historical study of his nearly 5-decade or around 5-decade career behind the wheel of a mini rod, he has been a fixture. And obviously, if you're talking about driver ability, and that's what we're evaluating, not equipment, and not who's turning the wick and the wrenches the most, but who is driving their tractor the best. Rick Peters is somebody who a lot of the peers, I'm sure, would look to say and put him in that spot. So obviously a guy who is a legend. And, when you start to study historical wins at all the events that we get to travel to, he finds himself in the upper tier of nearly every one of those events with wins.
Absolutely. Well deserved to be in this group, and the longevity that he's had in the sport. Of course, Miles, you and I have kind of grown up with him, and his daughter April for many, many years was there, and so it's good to see him there, still kicking as many years as he's been in the sport, and still laying claim to some competitive nature out there for sure. Number 4 here tonight. So having said that, let's go to our 3rd competitor here tonight in the mini rod ranks, as ranked by the pullers. And we're staying in Ohio, staying in the Buckeye State, the pride of Port Clinton, Ohio, Jeff Hurt. And the Little Bear here tonight, number 3. And, of course, Jeff, a longtime competitor in the, alcohol superstock ranks, jumped into the minis to have a little bit of fun a couple seasons ago, and it has paid off in spades for him. And he has just taken his driving ability, kind of the wild man, one of those, kind of very unconventional, doesn't seem to be, doesn't seem to have fear. Nothing really gets to him. Like I can remember several times, tractors blowing up while he's sitting on them. Things are ablaze, and he's just cool as the other side of the pillow the whole time. And really, really can read a track and get these tractors to do what he needs them to do. And he's got a couple championships in various capacities, of course. And good to see him breaking the top 5 here tonight. Jeff Hurt, Port Clinton, Ohio, with Little Bear.
Yeah, old Mr. Excitement. Good to see him there in that number 3 spot here tonight. And of course, like you talked about, relatively new to the class, but how he is taken to the class as quickly as he has, and still runs that, open super as well at the same time. And that's got to be, it's got to be very difficult to do. And
for sure,
and Jeff definitely has taken to these minis, and we'll see what's in store here for him for this year, and we'll move along here.
We can do first up in the class. just like the Ford.
What can really be said about the all-time winningest mini rod guy? You think about Iron Toy and what Adam has done and the time that he's been involved. He has been tremendous and continues to just thrive in everything he is doing behind the wheel of whatever it is he's driving. But this guy is one very tough out. There's no question about it. And for many of us, he was in that top 5.
Absolutely. And I know our conversations last week about super stock tractors. Will he not? It's going to be interesting to see if they branch into that game. But the guy can just flat out drive whatever he decides to strap into, whether it be the cross-threaded machine or one of these minis. He's a driver. Absolutely. Grew up in the sport. Of course, no slouch at all. Good to see him in the number 2 spot here tonight. So without further ado, that leaves only one, gentlemen.
That's it.
Just one here tonight, and so I will take the pleasure of revealing our number 1 competitor here tonight as ranked by the Mini Rod Pullers on Full Pull.
Little farm also. This guy knows what he's doing. Let's see what we're going to do. Oh boy. What is it when you bring...
And there you have it, fans. Your winner here tonight, ranked number 1 in the Mini Rod division, as voted on by the Mini Rod competitors, none other than Mr. Brian McDonald.
Yeah, that very little sanity. Of course, a Grand National champion here this past year, but you go back and years in 2-wheel drives and different kind of modifieds, and finally made it up here into the mini rod class, and just really took to him pretty quick here. As we see our top 5 lineup here: Brian McDonald, the number 1, number 2, Adam Bauer, Jeff Hurt, Rick Peters, and Bruce Slaw. So, Miles.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when you look at it, here are the things I will tell you, and I'll start by saying, Brian McDonald. Again, very similarly, when you think about what Jeff Hurt, step right in and just make a difference and win. And how do you do it? Well, the first thing is you understand what you're doing and why you're trying to do what you're doing in pulling. You've got to gear your vehicle. You've got to understand where you want to put that tractor on the dirt. And those guys aren't rookies in that game. Those guys are polished. If you were to circle somebody who, you said, Miles, you get 3 2-wheel drive truck drivers who are going to actually drive a truck. Brian McDonald might be one of the 3 that I'm going to put into my 2-wheel drive truck and let him wheel it for me. So very humble and very, very understanding of what the concepts are, what he's trying to do. And I love the beautiful story of him commuting from Kennedyville, Maryland, out off the island, out to compete with us and be with us. So, very fitting guy. Adam Bauer. My goodness, what can you or can you not say about the guy who's just a winner and he wins all the time? And then, Jeff Hurt. Again, we'll go back to the similar concepts of what we're talking about with Brian, in my opinion, a guy who just gets the general idea and concepts. He bought a proven tractor that goes out and wins, and he has a power plant that he believes in, and all of those things are really, really good things, but you still got to drive the tractor. And I think part of what you got to have a little bit with that mini rod is you just can't be afraid of it. And he's not. That dude's not afraid of anything. So that makes him a natural fit for this. And then, the next 2 gentlemen on the list are just legendary pullers who aren't afraid also, but understand concepts and understand what they're doing and can drive the wheels off of pretty well anything. And so, I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that this is what my 5 looked like. Quite honestly, it's not what my 5 looked like, but I don't have any dispute of why these 5 people are on the list.
Amen. For sure.
Yeah, and absolutely. The championships between them all, and you start adding things up, and it's all across the board. And like you say, it's the best of the best, and that's what this rankings are all about. And these fellow competitors have ranked them, and Brian, a guy that with the years and years and years of that 2-wheel drive pulling, and then into that mini rod, and finally culminating into a championship there with the NTPA, and very impressive.
Well, not one, but two. When you figure he puts Chase in his two-wheeler, they got a two-wheeler and a mini rod Grand National title last summer. So no slouch whatsoever. And but I think you guys are true here. The one word that I'm thinking of when you look at those top five is experience. Seasoning veteran pullers who, away from just strapping in and getting it done, understand the variables of how to weight a machine, how to read a track, how to, get everything they need to get to make the best pass that they can and win. So again, I think this is a great top five. Echoing Miles' sentiment, not exactly how mine looked, but again, no argument with the top five that the pullers have chosen.
All right. So once again, we'll recap our top five here. Well, just like that, we'll have our number one driver, Brian McDonald, joining us here tonight. Brian, thanks for taking a little bit of time and joining us here tonight.
Good evening, man. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
And once again, congratulations on being ranked number one here by your fellow competitors. And what a season.
I want to thank my fellow competitors. I'm not sure I'm worthy of this, but I do appreciate it. I'm kind of like you guys. I think there's some other guys up there that, probably deserve it a little better and that I've learned from. So anyway, we had a great season. It was a lot of fun. We all got along really good and worked hard, and everybody stepped up and did what they needed to get things done. So that was a dream season for us.
Well, Mr. Brian, talk a little bit. I want to know the story. Like, you being a longtime two-wheel drive competitor, how does this Mini come into play? Like, what are the conversations that, kind of swayed you to jump in and try something a little bit different? And is it something you always wanted to do? And then kind of what was the impetus for it to happen last season for you?
I always liked the mini rod class, but I really never liked the way they broke rear ends every few runs. And, Brett Berg and Brad and I kind of worked together a little bit on one of his first rear ends with some planetaries, and they held up and they worked. And that's kind of a game changer for the mini rod class. It stopped from breaking the rear ends every half a dozen runs or so. And, that kind of opened the door to where it was feasible to have a mini rod and not have to work on it the rear end every 3 or 4 runs. Okay. So anyway, it looked like a lot of fun, and the competitors in the class, I didn't get a chance to do it, but I wanted to be a competitor against Larry Kester. I just thought he was a fantastic guy. To me, that's Mr. Mini Rod, Larry Kester. And, just wanted to try something new. And the ride looked exciting. And, the two-wheel drive, you have to be so patient. And maybe, I can be patient, but I'm not the most patient person. So that looked like it'd be a lot of fun to run the mini ride class. And, single engine, a lot of similarities. And so got working with Brad and stuff, and he built the chassis, and it really worked out fantastically.
Absolutely. Well, good for you. That's like I say, you set a goal, you set a plan. Hey, we're going to do this. You can't be much more successful than to win the Grand National title. So very, very, congratulations and kudos to you. That's huge.
Well, we appreciate it. Thank you. It was a lot of work, and I say a big team effort. So I can't. It wasn't me. It just a lot of work from a lot of other people makes it happen. So I think any class you're going to win in Grand National, it's going to be a team effort with a big group of people helping you.
Sure.
That's just what it takes today.
Awesome.
Well, I've gotten to know you quite a bit over the years, Brian, and I'm quite comfortable, talking with you about your history and about what you've done. And quite honestly, it seems like, and you're incredibly humble. So I have no problem in saying that as well. But it seems like everything you touch turns to gold when it comes to a pulling vehicle, and it we can go all the way back to the early 90s and your success at Bowling Green and winning the ring and doing those sorts of things. But everything that you've kind of put your name on has been synonymous with incredible success. And I realize there's people that help you with that, but the spearhead of that is you. So where does all of this come from? Where does your knowledge, your experience, your history? Let's go back into where it really all began for you and how you found yourself as one of the absolute elite drivers and pullers.
Probably just doing it for a really long time. The first time I hooked a V8 powered tractor to the sled was in 1983. So there's just a ton of laps down the track. I try to learn something from every run. If you don't, I think you're wasting a run there. And, I try to be a student of the sport. And I enjoy the sport. I think it's very challenging. And, I like engines, I like to make horsepower and enjoy that. So I try to be a student of that, and try to just get everything I can out of something. And, a lot of people have helped me. I got lucky to work with Tim Engler and Ralph Banner. Those guys. Ralph Banner was, the guy that was no BS. Here's what we're going to do, and it worked. And maybe something wasn't flashy or shiny or something, but whatever it took to make it work is what he did. And I got lucky that he took me under his wing a little bit and just told me a lot of that stuff. Didn't come out of him easy, but he did do a lot of stuff with me. And I think that's what you have to do. Just learn, what it takes to pull that sled farther, faster than the next guy. That's the goal. The goal is to make more power so you can be faster, but more power doesn't always get to the track. So you have to, that's the goal, is pull that sled farther than the next guy. And I think if you keep that in mind, that's makes you do better. So, that's kind of my approach to it.
Sure. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Now, Brian, one of the first times I saw you drive that mini rod, Fort Recovery, Ohio, and you got off that tractor and you're covered in oil and here we are a couple of years later, championship. And I mean, just the learning edge there. What was with the, first time getting in the mini and then, learning the different things that, they throw at you, I mean, totally, is there any similarities with a two-wheeler, or is it just basically everything you knew with a two-wheeler throw away, or can you use some stuff?
I think everything in a two-wheeler you throw away.
Okay.
It's not anywhere close. Things happen so much faster in the mini rod. As soon as you start hitting that throttle, stuff's shaking and vibrating, and you're going. And they're unpredictable. And if you feel something, one tire or the other, get out of the track, you better let out of it, because bad things are going to happen. Sure. But the first run, actually the first run was Friday night there at Fort Recovery, and I had to make a barrel valve adapter to move it over a little bit, and the piece of aluminum I made it out of, I didn't realize it was cast aluminum, and it broke. And about 30 feet or something, the barrel valve broke. It fell down, cut the fuel off, leaned out, and detonated the engine. So thinking I knew it was hurt, but I didn't think it was hurt that bad. And we leaked it down. I thought, well, maybe my leak down tester is not working just right, but engine sounded okay. And we ran it Saturday night. It had a lot of blow by from the rings. Yeah, I like that picture. And anyway, but it ran good enough to make good power, and it ended up winning that night. But it had so much blow by, it blew the burn down tubes off of it. And that all, instead of throwing it down on the track, it threw it all over me and the fenders and everything. I think that happened around 100 feet or so. And about
I remember seeing, remember seeing the green oil spraying everywhere, and
I couldn't hardly see it before. And but it was going, so I didn't want to let out of it.
Didn't want to get out of it.
Yeah. Anyway, and we came home and freshened the engine up. Had to put new piston rods and rings in it, and anyway, and came back, and it ran good that season. It ran really good. Anyway, then the next season we kind of had a fuel pump issue. It started eating the fuel pump up, and had to put a bigger fuel pump on middle of the season because it chewed the old one up, and it was leaning out. And it really wasn't making good runs, and then it wasn't making any power. And we finally got the ship uprighted and learned a lot, but came back. At the end of the season, we were making decent runs again, and 2023 was a good year. We learned a lot too, and did better, and had a few, bad breaks that things didn't go perfect. But anyway, we kind of put it all together for 24, and had good runs, were consistent, didn't have any major breakage, and that's what you need. Just keep banging them in there, make consistent runs, and it worked out really good for us.
Yeah, I'll say. Well done. So you talked about, throw the similarities, and there's no comparison in between the two-wheeler and the Mini. Now, I will ask you, I'll put you on the spot. Which one is the better ride for you?
No question. The Mini rod, no question about it. Yeah. The two-wheel drive's, fun, and that's okay. I just like the Mini rod better. It's more exciting. Get your heart beating. You better pull your straps down tight. That you got to have respect for it. And I'm not saying the two-wheel drive you don't have to, but they're not quite as unpredictable as the mini rods are. There's a little bit of unknown with the mini rods. So anyway, there's
I think
that.
as I start to evaluate, Brian, things that I would look at. I mean, for a two-wheel drive truck driver, as you're talking to step right into the Mini division, over the course of the last 2 or 3 years, if I were to categorically think about my top 5 to 7 passes in a Mini, you have a few of those. You had some pretty brilliant runs. Is there one or two that kind of stick out in your mind where you literally cracked the whip, laid back in the seat, and just thought, holy moly, I am not going to stop until you got to 400 feet, maybe somewhere?
I asked Von Bauer, I said, what's the fastest run you ever been on? And to my surprise, he said, you last night. And anyway, that was at Rockwell, Iowa. And I said, you know what, though, on the GPS, it actually showed me going faster down in Chapel Hill, Tennessee on Saturday night. And that was one of those ones where it picked the front end up, and it pushes you back in the seat. And, that was a really good ride. All of them are good. There's really, the mini rod, there's really not bad runs. They're all pretty good. I'd have to say that I'd actually driving Chase's tractor at Wellington the last hook of the season. I pulled out on the track, and the track had gotten a little firmer and better. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I hope that we didn't get too greedy with the drawbar. And I knew it was going to be a lot better. And as soon as I hit the throttle, the front end came up on it, and it never wobbled or wiggled. It front end came up nice and high. It took off and went straight as an arrow. And that was a lot. Knowing what was at stake, and making a good run like that, that was a ton of fun. So anyway, but I say they're all fun. So
I'm going to ask you a follow-up
maybe
question.
It would have been the big one at Bowling Green last year.
Yes.
I was thinking that was the one you were going to say. Hey, that was one of my favorites.
That's where I was going with my follow-up question.
Yes. That was kind of unexpected. That was stands out too. I say there's no bad runs. So, anyway, only when you catch on fire, they're bad. But other than that,
how regularly are you working on a brake, feathering a brake, got a foot on a brake, your front end's up? Are we doing anything with the brakes at all, or we're just on it?
Yeah, if you have to hit the brake hard, you're not going to win. Maybe just touch them. A lot of times, don't hit them at all. So, I try not to be on the brake much.
Seems like it changes your balance.
Yeah, I try to correct early.
Yeah.
I try to correct early and often, and get it. I try not to let it get out of shape. I really want to focus on where I plan on going and try to get there. So,
anyway, but if it does start to get crossways on you, do you hit the brakes while getting out of the throttle, or do you just get out of the throttle?
I don't think the brakes are good enough. I've never had to. Of course, I'm going to jinx myself. I'm not going to
get out of the throttle, Jeremy.
No, I'm not getting out of the throttle. I'm going to burn the brakes up before I get out of the throttle.
Okay, fair enough.
We're on the money button. We're going.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. We traveled that far. We're gonna go for it for sure.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Now, Brian, we've got word that the tractor has been sold. What's in the plans here for Brian in the future here?
Well, I kind of just traveling from the East Coast to the Midwest is really I enjoy getting to once I'm in the Midwest, I enjoy it, but getting there can be a challenge. And I've been doing it since 2015, kind of on a regular basis. And I just need a little bit of time off this summer, and had a chance to sell my tractor. And if I'd have kept it, I'd have pulled it. I don't have that much willpower. So I thought, you know what, I better sell it and just take this summer off and catch up on a lot of things, that you get behind on, you put off until this or that. I just really needed to do that. And I think I'm going to be in a seat of a mini rod later in the season, probably not the first couple of hooks, but later in the season, I think there's Brad's working on one, and it looks like things can change in an instant, but it looks like I'll be middle of the season on. I'll be driving.
The hired gun.
I think so. Yes.
There you go. All right.
Well, I want you to elaborate on something too, Brian, because this is I told Jeremy and Dan this in the opening, but this is one of the unique things I love the most about you and your story is where you live and kind of what you've got to do to get to the Midwest. It's not just as simple as jumping into the truck like we do, and a lot of times getting there. You've got some pretty significant commuting. So will you please kind of give everybody a geographical story and sort of what it looks like for you to load up and go?
Well, I live about 50 miles from the Atlantic Ocean, and I live in between the Chesapeake Bay and the Atlantic Ocean, across from Baltimore. So I actually have to drive east and south to go northwest. So I have to go down and get on 301 and Route 50, and I'm about an hour from the Bay Bridge, and you have to cross the Bay Bridge, and then that puts me into Annapolis, and then I can start going northwest at that point and take usually go up through Frederick and Hagerstown, and it depends how the weather is and how things are going. But either take Route 68 out to West Virginia, or take the Pennsylvania Turnpike out to Ohio. It just depends, where I'm going and what the day is. So anyway, and last summer mostly I took the rig out in June and left it out in the Midwest until after Enderley and bought it home. So that helped a lot. And I either drove a pickup, or Allison and I went together of some sort, or we flew out, just a variation of things. But that's you figure it's a day for me to get to Modern's machine shop in Indiana, and then a day to get back. So that's 2 extra days from Indiana that I've got to, go. I've gotten to the machine shop in the late afternoon, and everybody jumps in and kept on driving, and thankfully some of those guys, will jump in and drive, and what a huge help that is, that makes it doable. So anyway, yes.
We talk a lot about, these folks that come from Texas and a lot of the places to jump into it. But a lot of times, for you to make it to Rockwell or some like Toma, once you get to Indiana, you still got a pretty good run. Yep. So, you're not just on the bottom side by any means of that travel either. There's a lot of people that would take the Texas trip maybe over your trip.
And that's, getting from the Bay Bridge really to Ohio, that is a lot of traffic, a lot of hills and turns and ups and downs. It's not a easy, put the cruise control on and ride. It's a challenge. And but once you get to Ohio, my blood pressure drops down a little bit, and you can cruise long. And anyway, but I can't remember. It's about 20 plus hours to get to Hutchinson, Minnesota. When I leave to go there, I didn't think I'd ever would get there. So anyway, that's a long ride for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's really kind of a shame, growing up in Western New York. I mean, we used to
experience it.
We used to have a couple Grand National pulls within a couple hours. Yes. And then slowly but surely everything has started to, same with you, it started to work its way back to the Midwest, and that's really where everything is kind of nowadays. And
for sure. Yeah. And I understand why the guys in the Midwest don't want to come east. It's not a fun trip. So anyway. Yeah. So I'm hoping to recharge, and get things in a good place this summer, and maybe hit it again in 2026. So we'll see, though. Never know.
There you go, for sure. Well, you guys got anything more for Brian?
No, good. Just congratulations, and
thank you guys. Thanks for everyone who voted for me. There's much more worthy people out there that could have easily been, better drivers. So anyway.
Well, Brian, thanks for taking a little bit of your time here this evening and spending it with us here on This Week in Poland. And we know we're going to see you out somewhere this summer. We know that, right?
I'll be somewhere.
Yes. Yeah, he'll be somewhere.
But thank you guys for all you all are doing. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
All right. We'll see you, Brian.
See you guys. Bye.
So he's definitely, an incredibly humble guy. And I think a lot of times he just downplays it, what he's been able to achieve. And I will tell you that there were years and years and years that I was constantly saying, hey, you got to come run a full circuit. We got to have you out for the whole circuit. And I have begged him, you got to come to the farm show. You got to come to the farm show. And so it was pretty neat for Chase to be there this year with their truck and certainly see him have success as well, because I think that team and that combination and what they've been able to put together has been pretty awesome. And Brian, again, very humble and successful. So certainly appreciate him joining us. And, guys, we've kind of reached that 3/4 of the way through our hour here of time. So, we can kind of start to talk a little bit about our top fives, and then we'll follow the suit of what we've always done with our historical tops.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And, we go back with Brian, and you had mentioned earlier, Miles, the first guy to win the ring at Bowling Green in 2-wheel drive, and just, over the years, and just really never dabbled in the national circuit, like you say. And then you finally, was able to come out and show everybody what he was, capable of doing. And he did it,
Absolutely.
I totally agree. I just think, like he's one of them. Like he said he's not somebody who's fit to be on that number one spot per se from his peers, but I disagree. I will tell you, I didn't have him in my top five, but didn't have him in my top five because I had the intel and the knowledge and the understanding that his tractor was sold. And so I didn't have him in my top five because I wasn't expecting that he was going to be out in 2025. And when I evaluated who my top five were, I was thinking, who are the five that are going to be out driving this season? And
Right.
with him not having a tractor, I took him off my list. So do I think he warrants that spot? Yes, I do. I'll put him right back up there in that perch and say yes. But on my list of five, he was not on it because I knew he didn't have a tractor.
Same.
So, Miles, who'd you have on your top five?
I'll tell you, I had 9 that I was kind of circling and working through and really kind of trying to find my 5. I will tell you, Adam Kester is one of my 5. I'm not giving you who my top 5 were in order, but Adam Kester was one of my top 5. Jeff Hurt was one of my top 5. Adam Bauer was one of my top 5. Those were guys who I definitely thought warranted that, and I think you start to dig through that and look a little bit deeper. One of the guys who I think is really a phenomenal mini rod driver, and maybe I'm off because they haven't been running the full point circuit. That's Reese Shelton. So Reese was in my group, and then I will tell you that I settled on my 5th. But I had both the Theobalds I was thinking about in my group. I had Grayson Shelton I was thinking about in my group. But my 5th is Brian Guza. And so he was who I would have circled in that group right now for my top 5. So in my 5 were Adam Bauer, Adam Kester, Jeff Hurt, Reese Shelton, and Brian Guza. Like I said, I had Renee and Grant both kind of in my list of people that I was evaluating and thinking about. I also wanted to give some serious thought to some regional level guys who may not be running the full circuit or are not always getting some of the fanfare. And that was both the Pysick boys and Nathan Hoffman from up in Wisconsin, who shows up at Toma and puts that tractor on a rail and just does magical things.
Yeah.
I think he does a really nice job driving. And there's one other person who I kind of thought about, and I think it's the combination of who sets the tractor up and who drives the tractor. But I'm always very, very impressed with how Kim Kwame drives her tractor. When she's sitting there in the seat and the combination of her and Zach kind of getting set in there. And then she just gets in there. Seems like the front end comes up and she's on a rail and there she goes, front end up and let's go. So, really hard, really difficult for me to be able to give you my 5. And I hope I didn't upset anybody with how I settled on who I did. But my 5 were people I really thought were warranting that. Again, I will tell you, I didn't think Bruce was going to pull this year based off of his accident. So I omitted Bruce from my list. And if I were going to tell you of people who I think I'd look for my 2026 list, if Bruce is able to come back and if Brian has a tractor, well, they might find their way right into my 2026 top 5.
Jeremy, who would you have?
Well, I echo Miles' sentiment. I did not have Mr. McDonald or Mr. Slaw in my top 5 because I did not realize that they were, considered active. So, but they do absolutely warrant, the discussion, and I think they are in a good spot. I was a little bit different. I'm kind of always an outlier, but I had, I had Ken Vinny in my top 5. One of the elder statesmen. The man has forgotten more about cylinder heads than I'll ever know, and he is brilliant, even in his late 80s, behind the wheel of anything he straps into. He is very, very good at not only, modified pulling, but, mini modified pulling. And I think he warrants to be in there. Adam Bauer, of course, I feel like is very deserving. Adam Kester was on my list. Rick Peters was on my list, and Jeff Hurt was on my list. Sort of my Also mentions I had both Theobalds in consideration. Abby Leichner is one that I thought of about. I feel like when that tractor hooks up and she is, when that thing's on kill, she can grab it out the gate without question. In terms of 2026, next year, maybe down the road a piece, I agree with Miles. I think if Bruce Law can come back, if Brian McDonald can come back, I think the Sheltons are ones to watch. And I look for that red tractor that the Nelsons have to do some things. When they get it out and get the bugs worked out of it, I look for the Midnight Motorsports team to have some success maybe this summer, but definitely into 2026 when they get it figured out.
Yeah, and talking about Abby, I was thinking about that too. And one of these days, I got to go back and figure out her percentage as far as winning percentage.
It's a
driving
good
that tractor because seriously, I mean, she's either wins or within that top three every time that she's driven that tractor. So
absolutely, and of course you got to look at the folks from the Netherlands and the Boer family, and the equipment is top notch, and that is what it is. But the young lady can absolutely drive the wheels off of any tractor you strap her into, and I feel like that warrants a discussion here. Like I say, I have her in my also mentions, and I feel like going forward, she's you have to look at her based upon what you just said. If she shows up, she has a good number, and the tractor is weighted correctly, and all of the stars are in alignment, she's going to pull it out the gate, and we're going to be in a pull-off. That's just the way it goes.
So I'm kind of in agreement with you guys as far as my top five. I had Brian on the list. I had Adam Bauer, Rick Peters, but then I also had Adam Kester and then Grayson Shelton. Sure. I had in my no particular order there, but that was my top five there for drivers. And like you say, we're all kind of in that same. We've got the same guys, just a matter of where everybody fits into everything. But yeah, that's. Now let's take it one step further. We have talked about, who do we think for next year is going to be in that top five position.
Yeah, I'll reiterate kind of, I think Grant Theobald will probably be in the hunt. I think he has been, and you think about when we're actually evaluating our top five, I'm going to say he might have been the one that won the most hooks last year, or if he didn't, he was darn tootin' close in 2024. I think he had 4 Grand National wins. I know he won some pro pulling events as well. So when you put the numbers together, I think he absolutely warrants the discussion. I might have, there might be dartboards with my face on it next week when we have the No Practice podcast discussion, because I haven't mentioned Chase or Tyler, but I think Tyler does a nice job and I think Chase does a nice job. And so I could very easily see one of those guys make their way onto it. And like I said, I'll stick with the thought process that I think Bruce or Brian could be right back in the group. And I think there's no doubt. I mean, Rick and Adam and their longevity in this game, it's fantastic. I think there's a way to watch a puller come out, and there's a way to notice things. And I don't think that I am an expert at evaluating who and how, but I can just tell you that for a tractor to come out and have multiple team tractors and see a setup of a tractor and watch, and then see one's reaction versus the other, there's a lot of driving that is happening in those mini rods. And, from one tractor to the next, and I will tell you, I've seen it and I watched it this summer with Cody Singletary. I'll use it as an example. He's a guy who I think is coming on like crazy, but he had multiple tractors, obviously back-to-back tractors in the class. And he learned so much from the first pass that when he came out and drove the second pass, it was like, holy moly, what a difference. And it may have been subtle changes. It may have been gearing. It may have been air pressure, but it also was driving. And so he's a guy who I'll put on my radar as well. And I've pretty well named the class. So you guys go right ahead.
Well, I just want to say Carolina Night Train. If you guys don't say it, I'll say it. Like that is the greatest name I've ever heard. And it's so fun to announce. I have, the reminiscence of, some of the people who have gone before. I'm no stranger to older announcers and Keith Bradley. And I really wish that Keith Bradley were still here, because I would love to hear him say Carolina Night Train. I think Cody Singletary is definitely one to watch. Maybe the Pennsylvania Campbells. It'll be interesting to see once they get those two together, how that works going out there. But the minis are so popular now. Like, anybody can build one tomorrow. So again, we could try to prognosticate until we're blue in the face. But I think we just, I think we kind of table this discussion. We see how the season goes, and then maybe at the end of the season we have a stars of 2026 list, and we kind of look at it from there. But I just feel like there's way too many that can, both on the regional national level and the regional level and the national level. Any given day, anybody can win in this class. It's just a matter of, luck being a lady for sure.
Yeah. And for next year, I would not be surprised at all. Like you say, with Chase and Grant, those would be my two that I think will definitely be in the mix for next year.
Absolutely.
I think it just once everybody gets rolling, and I think that's where. But like you say, you start rolling through the whole class, and Cody Singletary. I talked to him earlier this year down in Florida, and he said he wasn't sure if he was going to be able to make all the events like he has in the past with the new little one, but we'll see, what his travel schedule looks like, and hope to see him out there because, like you say, you could just see that evolution of, getting to know the tracks and getting out there and running. He's definitely going to be, one of those in the mix as well.
Future star. Absolutely.
So, well, guys, let's move on here to our historical part of the program here, where we're going to go back and dive into some of our all-time favorite mini rods that we have seen go down the track. And this part of the program is always a lot of fun to kind of look back and you think of some of your favorites that we have seen over the years. And who wants to kick it off?
Well, first I want to say thank you, Dan, for being the librarian of tractor pulling and having photographs of literally anything I could throw at you. Oh yeah, I got that. And I know, Miles had asked you one today and you were like, hey, do you want the green one or the black one? So I thought it was really, really neat. So I'll go first in no particular order here or mine. And this is, of course, the Coldwater, Michigan Mr. Thundermaker. And that would be Lee Swift. I have always loved this tractor. And in its day, fellas, it was a good out.
Yeah, 3 in a row, right? 3 championships
Absolutely.
in a row there for Lee Swift. And
all right, and let's go to number 4 for me. And this, of course, Glenn Gunther, Arkansas-based runner, I believe. And the Tough Enough machine, of course, this is, predating the roll cages. But I always loved the graphics on this tractor and love seeing him on the TNT circuits, both indoors and out. I just really like this tractor. And then I'll go to the next one. This is one that I always thought was really neat. We've talked a lot about this. This is the Dowling brothers, Dean Dowling out of Ohio. And I always saw this tractor up at Bowling Green, but it's the only mini I ever saw that was a C-cap. And it had the roll cage built inside the C-cap, which I thought was really neat. And of course, a lot of folks later on would say that, you're giving up way too much weight with something like that. But it really had the neat sort of cosmetic touches that, early mid 90s, late 90s, this tractor was really neat to look at on the circuit.
It is in my truck, though.
So there is Milk Fever. And then Roger Wysong, the Sting. I always liked this one, too. Of course, again, we're predating the fenders, but I just thought this tractor and the frames he built were absolutely beautiful. With those kind of one piece and the flare of the fenders. I always just liked a Wysong frame, and they're still out there. You see them every so often. Somebody will still show up with a Wysong frame, but this one was one that I really enjoyed. And then I think I got one more. And what can you say about this one that hasn't already been said? The Red Fox, Keith and Denny Horst, the father-son duo. And I always loved this tractor in all of its various liveries, but I also loved the fact that they ran a KB Olds for many, many years. They did some things with KB Olds that, a lot of people weren't able to get out of those engines, and they made them be very, very successful. And I always thought that was pretty cool. And
very cool. Yeah. And, that Red Fox, all the different, variations with the Fox on the front of it too. And, I kind of like when, people stick with that, kind of, classic look to them. And yeah, that was That was a good top 5 there. I think I'll go next here because I seem to always go last. So we'll have Miles. Bring us home here with his top at the end here. So I'll do my top 5 in no particular order here, as we'll see them coming up here. As we will start off, this tractor here, love this tractor, the Star Rider. This was Clay Johnson out of Arkansas. And like the earliest days that I've seen Grand National pulls, this tractor was there. And just, I've always been a sucker for blue. I always liked the blue tractors. And this one here was, that group from Arkansas, they were tough back in the day. And this was one of them right there. So the Star Rider comes in that number 5 spot for me. Then we've got the original Honkin' Donkey. This tractor, pictures don't really do it justice. How that red and the chrome just popped on Art Hathaway's tractor. When I first saw this thing, it was just gleaming and just a beautiful. And of course, the kids kind of took after that afterwards. But this one here, the original Honkin' Donkey, just a beautiful, beautiful tractor. And like I say, pictures just don't do it any justice. It was a gorgeous tractor.
Nice.
And then, of course, I always, like I say, the blue. The blue popped, and Larry with his Simpson helmet there, he just looked like a mean tractor. And always liked that blue metallic blue on there, and just a beautiful scheme, and just a very popular tractor. And it was just great to see, following the evolution of Larry over the years, and just to become one of the all-time greats in the sport of pulling. And started with the blue Footloose. Nice. And then this scheme here for Rick Peters was one that I really liked. I believe he won a Grand National Championship with this scheme, and this was like late 80s for this one. But, Rick, being in the auto body business, always had excellent looking tractors, but this one, for some reason, really stuck out. I always liked with the orange and the yellow there, and just really looked really great. So Rick Peters, the Buckeye Special there, and that number 2 spot. And then Ed Chalfant with the Right Stuff. Once again, another blue tractor. Now, this guy, he didn't pull very many years, if I remember right. He was early 90s. He was around early 90s, and a couple of years he was gone. But just something about that light blue with the purple. It just a really sharp-looking tractor. And that was my number 1 right there, the Right Stuff out of the state of Ohio.
Well done. I love it.
Me too. I'm sorry. I think I sent you 7.
That's okay. You always do that, Miles. You're good.
Yeah, I think I sent you 7, and I'll also tell you that I think your list and Jeremy's list are a little bit older dating than some of mine that are probably on my list. But we'll go ahead and look at this first one, and obviously, I got to be a part of this group, obviously, and the young man driving this tractor, I've known his entire life. So the success that they had with this tractor after they acquired it from the Hathaways, it just took off and went, and it seemed like this was one of the toughest outs in the game for years, and obviously pretty modern and still active in the game today. But that tractor right there was one that I'll give consideration. We'll say honorable mention for my top 5.
Absolutely.
Obviously, there is another one that is the Donkey Black tractor, and Jason just seemed to do so well. He and Art, and the combination that they had with Brian Knox, it worked very, very well as well. And I will give that one again consideration for my top 5. But I'll start now with my tractors that I would say categorically fit into my top 5.
Nice.
And that would be the Mac Attack of Mr. Robert Lenzini. I always loved watching Robert pull, and he had really pretty tractors, similarly to how Dan described it. Hearing Keith Bradley say his name over the microphone and Bowling Green.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, it was certainly one I'll never forget, and obviously he was a very tough runner. This one right here is the Sky King of Mr. Dave Campbell, and I remember this guy more from my young childhood of getting fireballs from him all the time and stopping by his trailer and visiting with him. And he was just a fella who I enjoyed getting to know over the years, and he was successful in the mini game, but also was always very friendly and welcoming to a kid who wanted a fireball from him.
And Miles, we should say jawbreakers, not whiskey.
Oh, yeah, no, candy, sorry. Next is Scott Walker, and that tractor, the Cowboy Up entry, and obviously Adam may be in the saddle right there. This one I can't remember exactly, but Scott was a guy who I grew up kind of around through his family, obviously with the Bowers and the involvement with the Bowers. But when Scott got involved in driving the Cowboy Up, he just made it look so easy, and he jumped right into the seat and had several wins, and very quickly became one who was to watch all of the time when he was driving. And obviously when he stepped away from the seat, Adam continued to drive both and went on to be just brutal with that tractor. So I loved the name and everything about it. I enjoyed getting to watch Scott have some success driving that tractor. And my next one, obviously, is Mr. Mark Stiggy. I remember Dad just always going over the microphone and saying, "That stud monkey."
Yes.
And so I enjoyed the Stiggy family very much. And obviously, Mark was just a fun guy to be around. So was his family, and always so much enjoyment getting to know them and getting to be around them when he started in this game. And Dad, of course, like I said, that's one of the tractors that just is always kind of resonating in my ear when I think about some of his voices that he brought to the game. And my last one is coming up now, and this is who I would categorize as number one. And that is that old Pennzoil tractor. I remember when it came out, and obviously I always loved the way that Larry framed the tractor in. And he was just such an ambassador. I got chills this evening when I got to see on Facebook the picture and the video of Adam working with Aaron and that next generation of building a Hemi. So just a little guy working with his dad in the shop in the same way I kind of envision Adam was with Larry. And now you think of the success that name has in this game. But we'll just say that yellow Footloose and the Pennzoil tractor, which is what I texted Dan. I wanted that Pennzoil tractor to be in there, and certainly they're like family to me. And that tractor is one that I just have sort of etched in my memory always.
Yeah, and it's always great when you guys will send your list in, who's who, and going back and thinking just different, Robert Lenzini, the Mac Attack, and you'll never forget Highland Park, Illinois, and it's like engraved in your head,
I can hear it. Like I hear Keith Bradley every time you say his name. Like I do. And it's not just him. There's several like that, but Robert Lenzini, I love it. It's the best.
Well, to Miles' point, I heard his dad with the stud monkey,
Good monkey.
I was like, yep, that was exactly it. And never found out what a stud monkey was. Didn't you have the cartoon on the side of it at one of them there?
Yeah. Sure. Dad would do that with a few of them. Like I always remember him, talking about Nick McCormick's tractor. He wouldn't just say it. He would always say, "That's this stuff."
Yep. And then he would the Bob and Tom show. He would go into that, and some great memories there, and some great tractors for sure.
Absolutely, great lists, fellas. Well played.
So just two more lists to work through, right?
Yeah, well, next week's going to be tough because we got super stock diesel trucks and not a lot of history.
Got my 5.
So I think we're going to have a lot of overlap with that one, but
sure,
because they don't have as deep as. But then, of course, we'll finish off with the unlimited modifieds, and that's always fun. So I saved a lot of my unlimiteds from the modified class from earlier, so that'll work out well. So we'll have a lot of fun with that. So that's coming up the next couple weeks. As once again, this weekend, Hansel Sullivan Memorial Pull. If you can't be there in person, Glencoe, Kentucky, watch it on Full Pull Live, as Jeremy and I will be on the mic there for this weekend, and going to have a lot of fun. I'm hoping that the weather holds out for them, and they are due for a great weekend. So
they are. It's been several years. I think you've been there the last couple, and you brought the rain with you when you came from New York. So
yeah. Well, at least I didn't bring snow, but and make sure you head on over to Full Pull Picks as well for this